Hello, everybody. Welcome to the iCreateDaily podcast. I'm Devani.
And I'm Leora. And today we're doing one of the iCreateDaily quote segments where Devani and I share a quote that has meaning and power to us and share it with you and discuss it a little bit, hopefully to inspire you to create something today. So our quote today is by one of our favorite, well-known motivational icons of all time, Jim Rohn, and the quote is, "If you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse."
So, if you don't know us or haven't been tuning into the podcast, I like fiction writing. All of us in our family of entrepreneurs like to do some sort of writing of some kind. Some of it's nonfiction, some of it's fiction, and I enjoy fiction writing. And the reason I got into enjoying story and sharing my own stories was when I was younger, I love reading. And I think a lot of us who are writers get into it because we love reading. And if you're not a writer, if you're a different kind of creator, you probably got into it because you were inspired by somebody else who did it, or you were trying to find something to fill some time with and you fell in love with the craft of doing something. Now, if you're the first type of person where you were inspired by other people who did the thing, so for me it's writing, then sometimes we have this perception of people that we look up to. And it's like, for me, it was Tolkien, J.K. Rowling, C.S. Lewis, all the classic cool people that we love to read. And I just thought their lives must be perfect. You know, they could sit at a cafe, they could write to their heart's content, and out came these amazing stories that we would read and soak up. And I was like, that seems like a really sweet life. And I was probably 14, 15, around that age. And so definitely an age where you're just sort of like, you have a less realistic view of the world and you think, I can do that too. I can just go to some random, cool, cute looking cafe. I can sit there like just picture like the perfect Instagram model, or, you know, on Shutterstock when they're sitting there looking off to the distance and it's like they have the idea and it's there and it's like, wow, I want to do that. But then you start and you sit in front of the blank page, you sit in front of the blank screen, the blank canvas, the blank whatever, because it's going to be blank first.
It's you and your keyboard.
It's you and your keyboard, you and your knitting, you and your painting. And you're sitting there and it's just sort of like, I'm in my home office. And it's really not like super glorious. It's very confusing. You have lots of ideas. You sit at the blank screen and sometimes it's just like, so all those fantastic ideas I had a few minutes ago because I was going to be the great next amazing globally best-selling author just vanish, gone. And you're just sitting there and what you realize is you're left with the realization that you have to show up for a process. And it's no different than any other job. Creativity is work. It's very hard work because you're pulling something out of your mind and you're putting it into whatever medium that you put it into. So for me, I like words. And I've had that similar experience with many different activities, right? I like photography. I like dabbling in painting now and then. It's not something that I want to spend my life doing. I would like to write novels. That is something that I enjoy. And I've come to realize that you fall in love with the process and that's what makes you become good. Tolkien, Rowling, C.S. Lewis, they had a process. And their process was, I show up every day and I write the words. And it can suck. It can be amazing. But I will write those words, and the work that comes out of that is what we see, right? We see the end result. We see the perfection that it is, or, you know, whatever it is. And I think a lot of us don't always realize, or maybe we don't want to face, or maybe we know that we're romanticizing something, but we don't necessarily want to address that. And I think to become successful and to really master whatever you're trying to do creatively, you have to address the areas that you are romanticizing. So for me, I love photography, and I love it as a hobby. I don't want to be the person who shows up every day and perfects photography as a craft. I don't have an interest in doing that. It takes a lot of work. And frankly, I don't want to spend my life becoming a master photographer, but I love it. It's a fun hobby.
And it's not, to clarify, because it's not that, because you work a lot. So it's not that you mind work.
Right.
But it's that.
It's not that work.
Yeah.
It's like if I could choose what to do with my day, it would not be perfecting my photography. I enjoy doing it. I think now and then I have a good eye and I'll see something and I'm like, that's a perfect photo and that's cool. And, I'll post it maybe, I'll save it for, keepsake, and that's fun. But I've recognized, and for a long time, I would romanticize being labeled a certain way. So it's like, I'm a photographer, or I'm an aspiring photographer. And I know one of my favorite authors and a friend and somebody I look up to, Jeff Goins, he talks a lot about the difference between doing and labeling yourself as aspiring to do something. There's this thing where there is a point where you should aspire to be something, but at the same time you shouldn't use I'm aspiring to do something to delay the doing of that thing. And I think for a long time there were a lot of things that I did where like, I'm aspiring this, I'm aspiring that, and really it was just like you enjoyed this as a hobby. And you have to face that, Do you have examples?
Yeah,
I could go on with other examples, but I don't want to. Yeah. One the whole time.
Oh, shoot. I just lost my thought.
That happens too.
Yeah, that happens. Because I had a lot of thoughts. So to reiterate the quote by Jim Rohn, if you really want to do something, you will find a way. If you don't, you will find an excuse. And we all know the truth in that, because anything that's really important to us, we do find a way to do it. And the thing is that we become our excuses. We become our habits. I remember what I was going to say. I think that a lot of times where it is sometimes the chasm between getting to the other side of being serious about it versus the romanticized notion is that it's very hard to visualize what life is like on the other side.
Yeah, because you haven't been there.
Because we haven't been there. So we haven't been there. It can be very hard and even feel very pretentious for us to assume that we could be and reach the status of the authors that we admire, or the movie producers, or the painters that we admire, whatever.
Composers,
yes. And so, but as you mentioned in the previous session, we all know that none of them arrived there quickly overnight and got that way the first time we saw them. What was behind that was many, many, many long, hard hours of creating daily, showing up and doing the work. So we just have to and so back to the romanticized notion though. So yes, if we're romanticizing it, but we're not willing to do the work, then maybe it isn't like with your photography, something you enjoy, something you'll probably do all your life, but not something you're going to take into a serious profession, other than to use it for our own blogs and websites as we do, but not as in to sell to others and make a living from it. So it doesn't mean you can't do it, but what you've recognized is you're not serious enough about that to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to hone that craft.
To be the best at the thing.
But with writing, so you've recognized and you've addressed your romanticized notion, of the image of the writer's life. And which
I always go back to those Shutterstock images, and maybe you've seen them. We'll stick a few down for humor's sake. But it's just like, and I always laugh whenever I would see them, because I'm like, that's not what it looks like. And it would be like this lady with like great perfect hair, and she'd just be sitting there with like a pencil stuck in her ear, and she'd be like wistfully looking at the distance, like literally like, I'm looking at the idea out there, and it's on the horizon, and it's on the tip of my tongue, and it will be spun into gold on this typewriter. And when you start creating, you know that that's not realistic, except at the same time you kind of wish it was, because it's like, oh my God, why is it so easy for that person? And but it never is. It never is that easy. And I think the quicker you get out of the quicker you recognize that you romanticize, and it's fine to romanticize something. I think that's what sparks your curiosity about it.
Yeah,
that's what's
you got to envision a better possibility. So the thing about the romanticized notion is, though, once you're on the other side of the success of it, some of it is that romantic venue. Some of it is the audiences that invite you to speak because you're the published and highly successful author. Some of it is that you easily get the next book deal or easily get the next many sales of your book because you've built an audience and you've built a reputation of success. And things do actually get easier. But even then, you know, the writers still, it gets back to between them and their keyboard. You know, it's between them and the blank screen. And it is always then just a battle of finding the way to do the things that matter to us. So you said earlier, and it's another good quote, you fall in love with the process, and that's what makes you become good. So that's what's important. What you were describing, the romanticized notion, is often the end vision of what that famous person's life or that successful person's life must be like. And that's good to hold into our vision board, so to speak, to aspire to our version of what that will look like, whether we're traveling the world or speaking or have a stack of novels with our name on it, or paintings.
Because you have to have a clear vision of what you're trying to get to. In terms of, like, when you write a novel, for instance, you have to have that clear vision of, where am I taking this story? And so with your own life, you have to be like, where am I taking the story of my life? What is the end destination of this? And then you work your way backwards and say, how do I get to that? And so that image is a good one to keep for reminding yourself and coming back to, this is what I show up for. This is why I'm waking up in the morning. This is why I'm staying up late at night. This is why I'm doing this, you know, is because at the end of my life, I'm going to look back and I'm going to think, wow, you know, look how far this has come, and look how much I've created, and look how much. And even if you don't put it out into the world, say that you want to show up every day and create something, whether or not the world sees it or not. Because that's the thing too. Would you be doing it if the world saw it or not? And yes, we all want the recognition. We all want the significance of being important. But you get the significance of being important by doing the things that are important to you.
Yes.
And so that's how you get there, wherever there is for you.
Yeah. No, that's great. So yeah, my personal example would be dancing. You know, I've always loved dancing. And when I was growing up in Hawaii, the only dancing was Hawaiian, which was fantastically beautiful, but not being Hawaiian blood, I don't know, I just always loved seeing the beautiful brown Hawaiian women with gorgeous hair like yours doing it instead, you know, and so I didn't take up dancing. And then there really weren't the other kind of modern dancing opportunities like there are today. So yet, if I think about it, you know, would I have practiced? So one of the ways I kind of know about whether it was just an interest and a romanticized notion versus something really serious, and that's what sets apart the ones who are destined to make it a profession and to make it their art, and that is if they would be doing it no matter what. You know, like you were saying, even if it never got published, would you be doing it no matter what? And yes, so if you're not into that, then it could just be that it's a romanticized idea, or it could be that you haven't immersed in it enough to become obsessed with it yet. Because the thing about, I tend to think of it as swimming in the sea of creativity. And when we're swimming, then we get into the flow of swimming. So, and once we're in the flow of swimming, then we get swept away in the beauty and the immersion of that. And so again, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. Jim Rohn.
So let us know your thoughts. What do you really enjoy doing? Are there have you noticed anything in life that maybe you thought was this amazing thing to do, and then you got into it and you realized, well, it takes quite a bit of work and effort here. And again, it's not about not liking work or effort. It's about you have, and I don't like to say we have really short lives, but the reality is that in the scheme of the universe, we're here for a short time. And so what are you going to put your energy into? And are you currently doing something you love to do? So,
and if you're not sure, because the thing is that as we are on the journey, we find new paths of opportunity. and then we might pursue things, and each one leads us to the next. So if you're not sure, if what you're doing is going to be your ultimate passion, but there's not a big other lure pulling you toward that horizon, then go ahead and dive in, immerse, like we talked about in the previous quote podcast, immerse in whatever it is that you think your art is to be in the world, and that will begin to lead you to the next and the next open door of opportunity.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.